Congress. The fight for the House lies somewhere between these two philosophies as the two men set their battle plans, and they join me now. Joining me now is the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee Chairman, New York Congressman Steve Israel, and the National Republican Congressional Campaign Chairman, Oregon Congressman Greg Walden. It's a political junkie stream. Israel and Walden, thank you both.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning. I want to, before we go to here, I just am curious of both of your responses. You guys are not Michigan guys, but, you know, you grew up in New York. New York went through this in the 70s where they almost filed for bankruptcy. What's your reaction to what's going on?
Well, you're absolutely right. New York in the 1970s was on the verge of collapse. Remember that Daily News article, Ford to New York dropped dead.
Same issues, and right? The wealthy left. Nobody knew what New York was going to be. You had government corruption. You had all sorts of issues.
That's very much. And we rebuilt, came out better than ever, and Detroit will as well.
It's a sad day for Detroit and Michigan, but I think it also is an example of what happens when government runs amok and tries to take on too much that it can't ultimately afford. It promises more than it can deliver, and this is the logical outcome from a financial standpoint. And I think other states and communities are facing this. Frankly, the national government's facing it.
Well, and it's going to be an interesting conversation that I think you talk to mayors, and it doesn't matter their party. You talk to governors.
Right.
They sit there and they whisper about this pension problem.
Right.
They don't want to talk about it publicly because they know it's unpopular.
Chicago's another place. You know, Illinois. I mean, they're on the edge. We've had other cities come right up to the brink or go over.
But you know, if you're a mayor, you have to balance your budget, and you can't inject ideology into everything. So I think House Republicans can take a lesson from mayors who have to be about solutions and compromise and balancing budgets and getting it done, and not about ideology and partisanship and extremism and chaos.
You know, he's practiced. The irony is it's House Republicans, the only ones that offered up a budget that actually balances in 10 years and pays off the debt. There wasn't a single alternative presented by the Democrats in the House or the White House or the Senate that ever balances fully in 10 years.
I want to talk about this larger issue here for what is 2014 going to be about? You saw the way I thought, perhaps the way this is going to get framed. You're the incumbent here, so I'll let you say. What do you think 2014 is going to be about?
Incumbent.
No, but you're defending a majority. He's trying to grab it.
Sure. So I think it's about a number of things. First of all, I think it's ultimately about jobs and the economy. You have 12 million Americans still looking for work. We know that as the president's health care law begins to take effect, there are companies as widely respected as Wegmans that is now they're reducing hours for people that used to work nearly full-time are now being reduced under 30 hours to avoid the potential the employer
Let me stop you on that. I hear this excuse, but were they ever going to offer health care at 35 hours?
Well, whether they were or weren't, the point is if you're a struggling person out there trying to make ends meet and provide for your family, does having your hours get cut back help or hurt your situation? And frankly, when you're getting cut back under 30 hours, now you're having to look for 2 part-time jobs that probably don't offer those benefits. And so, I mean, I think economy and jobs is paramount in terms of the voters' minds. It's what we need to be driving in terms of developing energy in America and, you know, creating really good-paying jobs. We all ought to be focused on that together.
All right. What say you? How are you going to frame this?
On everything that Greg mentioned, jobs, the economy, health care, wages, you need one thing in order to make progress on all those other things. You need solutions and compromise. And this Republican Congress has been about extremism, obstructionism. They find excuses not to do things, whether it's health care. They are not interested in improving health care. They've had, 39, 40 votes to repeal the entire thing. Immigration, you have 68 senators on a bipartisan basis passed it. Comes to the House of Representatives, all they do is find excuses to obstruct it. There is an unquenchable thirst, particularly, Chuck, in the districts that we have to win, suburban, independent, moderate swing districts, an unquenchable thirst for one thing: compromise. And we're going to put that compromise in the ballot in 2014.
All right, I want to talk about the next 6 months and how perhaps what your party ends up doing is at cross purposes with what you guys have to do. So, for instance, you got into some hot water with some Republicans when you were critical of the idea of Republicans signing on to the president's compromise on Social Security and CPI and change CPI, and you said, hey, we'll run against Obama on that. We're going to run against. So here was something your party was going to negotiate with him, and you're like, no, this is a political thing, and it came across purpose.
No, it's actually a bad policy thing, but
but I mean, ask you, is that no? I understand
it, but you know, I think we also said we're not going to go after existing seniors and reduce their income, and it reinstituted bracket creep in the tax brackets, which a bipartisan group of members back in the 80s under Ronald Reagan got rid of because inflation would drive up your wages, it'd put you into a higher tax bracket, and then you'd pay more than you were getting in terms of a salary increase. That was done away with. Chain CPI would put that back into the tax code. That was half of the total revenue, $100 billion over the budget.
But I guess, are you undercut in your message if you want to talk about that, this administration, this target?
Now you got.
Well, and I was going to go to. I have the same question to him. I was just going to say I have the same question for him, for instance, on immigration. So
no, I'm going to go to Obamacare because you raised that. Every one of the targets that we have, and you said this in your opening, that they've got to go defend, defied their president who issued a veto threat on legally delaying the employer mandate and legally delaying the individual mandate. All those folks voted with Republicans in a bipartisan way to send a message to the White House that Obamacare is, as Max Baucus said, a train wreck and needs to be refigured, repealed, whatever you want to do, fixed. By the way, some of the votes we've taken on Obamacare have had overwhelming bipartisan support, and we actually repealed the Class Act. We repealed the 1099 reporting requirement. We had 85 amendments when this was considered that were never allowed by the Democrats to be voted on the House floor.
Steve Israel, is it in your best interest if the president cuts a deal and gets a deal, bipartisan deal with the Republican House on immigration reform, has a big signing ceremony? Doesn't that undercut that message that you just said about they won't work with the president, they won't do obstructions if they give him basically a second signature piece of domestic legislation in the first year of his second term?
Most time good politics is good policy. Good policy is good politics. What is in our interest is what is in the country's interest, a solution, a compromise. I've looked at this every which way, particularly on immigration. You can slice it and dice it. You know what comes out at the end of the day? People want a compromise. The United States Senate, 68 senators, came together in a compromise. As far left as Elizabeth Warren, as far right as John McCain. If it can work in the Senate, if George Bush and Barack Obama can agree on it, why can't House Republicans let us at least vote? Right. Vote yes, vote no, but let us vote.
Sneak in a break. You guys are sticking around, and we're going to jump into some of the actual race stuff after the break. Campaign chairman sticking around, a little more time to talk with us about the narrow field of fight.